Today we are honored to have nutritionist Mary Donkersloot in the studio with us today. With over 20 years of experience, Mary currently has a private practice in Beverly Hills, helping clients overcome eating and weight issues. She also specializes in pediatric and adolescent weight management and regularly lectures at St. John's Hospital and eating disorder clinics. Mary has also written 3 books spanning a wide range of topics and has consulted with major corporations, including Kraft Foods, Starbucks, Quaker, and many others. Welcome to the studio, Mary.
Thanks, Ilana. It's really nice to be here.
So nice to have you. So some things we were all thinking about is, what are some common trends you see in people's diets before they start meeting with you?
Well, it's interesting because today's consumers are pretty sophisticated. I'm usually not the first dietitian they've seen, and probably not the first diet they've tried. So I hear them do the paleo diet.
Right.
They might be doing a low carb diet. Mark Hyman's approach. You know, I'm just thinking of people I saw today, and so people are confused.
Right.
And they just don't know quite what to do. Should it be low carb? Should it be high protein? You know, should it be gluten free? Maybe it should have no sugar or no dairy. It's a lot of no's.
Right.
And,
too many
and
no's.
so people are just rattled and confused.
Right. I also find working with people in the Southern California area, it might be like maybe just a little more bombarded with a lot of health claims in our area, possibly.
You know, I think that's true, and to our credit, you know, it's sunny and warm here, and we don't wear as many clothes as they do back east, and people want to look good, you know, and so there's a real incentive to want to eat healthfully, and also, you know, fruits and vegetables, and you know, they grow here, and there is just this preponderance of interest of that because of the environment.
Right.
And I think that's a good thing.
So do you find that a lot of your clients start off eating a lot of fruits and vegetables even before meeting with you?
You know, it's interesting, and it varies, and certainly not everybody I see is born and raised in Southern California, because we have a lot of transplants like you and me. But I think that you know, one of the things that I often notice is not eating enough vegetables.
Right.
And it may not be because they don't like them, it's just that that's not what's coming at us 24/7.
Right.
You know, there are lots of protein bars. Everybody's eating some kind of a bar, but they might not be eating, you know, the cauliflower we were talking about before we started. You know?
Exactly.
So if we can make some of those trades, that's helpful.
And that's a really good point, is protein bars, very easy to get that food group on the go whenever, but vegetables, which is something we want to make at least 50% of our intake, is so hard to find. Are there any type of vegetables you find are easy, like on the go and more accessible than others?
Well, I like to look for those people who don't cook very often for the less perishable vegetables, because one of the things that can happen is somebody will say, oh yeah, I never cook, but I'm going to start now, and I'm going to make a lot of things, and then they go to the market and they buy a lot of stuff. They go to the farmer's market and they have bags full, and then, you know, a week and a half later, they toss them. They haven't.
So what are some good ones?
So one of the things I usually tell people is plan to cook once this week. If they're not cooking at all, cook once.
That's great.
You know? And so, you know, it depends on what people like, and I like to start there. But, you know, the cruciferous cabbage family are great. You know, you can buy a head of cabbage and slice it up and saute it in a little olive oil with some onions, a little salt and pepper.
Right.
Fabulous.
And that will stay a couple of days in the fridge for sure.
Cabbage will keep for weeks in the fridge. You know, cauliflower, broccoli. One of the funny things I see is, it's not really funny, it's kind of sad, where the mom comes in and says, now I put broccoli on the table every night and Johnny just doesn't eat it. He won't touch it. And it's there every single night. Well, it's steamed broccoli with no fat, no olive oil, no garlic, no flavor, no salt. It's just steamed broccoli. The kid doesn't like it. So sometimes what I find is that, you know, kids like things that taste good. We all like things that taste good. And so with vegetables, I find you have to, you know, make them taste good, and then
absolutely, and a little fat goes a long way with something like cabbage.
Absolutely, you know, and you know, my magic way to get kids and adults to eat more vegetables is, you know, a little olive oil, some fresh garlic. You saute them, or you roast them in the oven. A tiny little bit of kosher salt, and they're delicious.
All good.
All good.
Yeah, I love them too. What do you find motivates people to change their everyday eating getting more vegetables? Like, what are some big motivating factors you see for wanting to make such a big lifestyle change in the way they eat?
Well, two things motivate people. One is vanity, the other is health. I mean, you know, it's a toss-up, which one it is. I think in my history, health can be a motivator, but it's not as concrete sometimes as vanity. Now, when somebody's doctors told them they're on the verge of getting diabetes or they have type 2 diabetes, that can alarm them to the point where they pick up the phone and call me and say, help.
Right.
So I do, but even those people, they want to fit into their clothes that they used to fit into, or they want to be able to have more energy. They want to keep up with their grandchildren or their children. And so I think it's both. I think ultimately what keeps people engaged in the process of making healthier choices is feeling good.
Right.
And that's the cool thing about eating well, is that you feel better like fast. It doesn't take weeks and weeks. It takes a long time to lose weight, but as soon as you cut back on your eating, if you're overeating and you cut back, you feel better the next day.
Right. Stomach, energy.
I mean, you feel better the next meal. So, and you have more energy, you're mentally, you know, more on top of things. It just gives you a sense of control.
Absolutely, for sure, I definitely see that. What do you find are the easiest adjustments one can make to their everyday eating to really just get it on the right track as soon as possible?
You know, one of the first questions I ask my patients is, are you happy with your eating pattern? And often they say no. Someone was telling me this morning that, you know, it was a woman who was a comedy writer, and she's at a table with 12 people, and in the middle of that table is chips and nuts and some fruit, but the red vines and candy and licorice and cookies and all day long.
Right.
And so since she got this job, she'd gained 10 pounds.
I don't blame her.
And so the problem was that her meals were really tiny because she was eating all these snacks.
Right.
And so what we realized is that her meals need to be bigger, and that would help her to resist the snacks. But she also has to change the world.
Yes.
She has,
out of sight, out of mind.
Because that visual cue, that's powerful.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, listen, I would gain 10 pounds on that. Okay.
That's what I said. I don't blame her.
I said, you know, let's have a meeting and, you know, let's see if we can maybe put the food over there.
That's a wonderful suggestion. Like, you know, the further distance you can be from the food, the severely decreases the chances you'll go for it.
You know, I tell people environment trumps all. Okay, whatever's in front of us, that's what we're going to eat. You know, you've given me something new, that's what I'm going to have.
Absolutely.
And so if I have to go get something else, it's harder, you know?
So what are some good suggestions that you gave her to maybe put on that table rather than those like calorie-dense foods?
Well, first of all, it's not even good food, bad food, it's timing.
Right.
She doesn't need to be eating all day long. You know, it's just going 3 hours without eating. So each meal should have some protein and some fiber and some healthy carbs and a little bit of fat. And so we came up with a plan for breakfast and a plan for lunch and a plan for dinner, and some strategies.
And evaluated the need for really eating throughout the day.
Right. We just don't need to be eating constantly.
Especially if you're sitting down writing comedy.
And when we look at America and the problem we have with obesity now, over the last, you know, since the 50s, 60s, 70s, the preponderance of food, big food, you know, sugar, fat, salt, coming at us 24/7 with huge portions, it's easy to understand why Americans have a hard time controlling their weight. There's just too much food. You go to the gas station. There's
everywhere.
There's everything. You know, and so every time you take your kid to the soccer game, there's bagels.
Right,
you know?
of course, of course. So
you know,
I think your idea of just evaluating the pattern is really key to changing the everyday actual food that you consume.
Right. So one of the biggest risk factors for overweight are those people who tend to be very reactive to food cues. So when they're standing in line at the bank, they take a candy.
Right.
You know? And so we want to end casual eating.
Right.
We want to work on saying that's not for me. I'm not having that. And so you know, to avoid eating popcorn at the movies because you know you're going to go to dinner later. So that's another really important rule that I like to introduce. The first step is always know what and when you're going to eat next.
Very smart. That's a great tip.
So, because if you know that you're going to have lunch after you leave the bank, then you're not going to have a candy because you know you're going to lunch.
Excellent. So kind of like thinking ahead, planning ahead, and getting those patterns in check.
Right.
Mary, thank you so much for coming today.
Thank you for having me.
Can you tell the audience how we can contact you if we'd like?
Let's see. Email.
Okay.
How about that? marydonkersloot@gmail.com.
Excellent. And do you have a website?
I have a website. It's marydonkersloot.com.
Excellent. Thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
For more on living healthy, living well, be sure to subscribe to emPOWERme.tv. Follow us on Twitter and like us on Facebook.